Okay, we are looking at the definition for evaluate. What does it mean to evaluate an instruction in Logo? So an instruction is evaluated when foo reads it and decides whether it needs to invoke a procedure, look for more input, or send back an error message. Okay? So for example, suppose your project page has a text box called text 1, and text 1 has a 7 in it. Let's look at that. So we have a text box called text 1 and it has a 7 in it. Okay, I'll make it a little bigger, make sure you can see it there. Okay, so there's our 7. So you send the following message to foo. Set text 1 to the sum of text 1 and 1. So let's look at that. This is actually a handy thing to know how to do if you're doing scoring and stuff like that. So I'm going to say CC, clear everything, and I'm going to say set text 1 to the sum of text 1 and 1. So evaluating an instruction basically has to do with stepping through the instruction and figuring out what you need to do. Okay, that's what foo does. Foo kind of walks through the message that you sent him and tries to figure out what it is you're asking him to do. All right. So if you send this message to foo, what foo does is he basically walks along and he says, okay, I see a letter here, so it looks like I'm going to have a procedure name. Let me walk along here until I get to a space. Okay, so I'm done. So my procedure name then is set text 1. Do I know how to do that? Well, every time you create a text box, you automatically create a procedure, which is a command called set, and then the name of your text box. So set text 1, and what that command does is it sets the value of what's in the text box to whatever is the input to set text 1. So foo goes along and says, yeah, set text 1, I know how to do that. Okay, so what I need in order to do that is I need an input. I need one input. I just need one input for set text 1. I just need something to type in here. So he goes along and he starts reading the next thing on the line that you sent here, and he sees, I see a letter of the alphabet. This is going to be another procedure name. So this procedure better be a reporter, because I need some input. Okay, and the only thing that can give me input is either if I typed in a regular word in here, like if I typed 15, then it would just give me a 15. So it'd have to be either like or if I said hello. So it would either have to be some word or list or something that you typed in directly, or it would have to be a reporter, right? Because it has to be something that's going to give me information. I can't put a command here because the command won't report anything. So I have to put a reporter in here. No. Okay, so I just showed you. I could have put like set text 1 home or set text 1 right. If I gave you a word with quotes or a number, something like that. But if it's a procedure name, and I'm showing right here, there's no quote, it's not a number, so this has to be a procedure name. If it's a procedure name, it has to be a reporter so that it can give me information. And it just so happens some is a reporter, and some can give me information, but some needs inputs. Okay? Sum needs two inputs. Number 1 and number 2 says reports the sum of its inputs. So sum is going to report the sum of the next two inputs. So I have to dig up two inputs for sum, and then I can do set text 1, right? So I've gone along and I've read up to my space, so I know sum is the procedure. I know how to do sum. I know it needs two inputs, so let me find the inputs. Okay. Here's an input right here. Text 1. Okay. Oh, or I'm going to walk along until I get a space, right? Now I know, text 1. Okay. Well, text 1 is a reporter. It better be a reporter, right? Because I need input for sum. Yeah, text 1 is a reporter. What it reports is whatever's in this box. So what's in this box right now is a 7. So that's going to report a 7. Now, does text 1 need any inputs? Actually, no, it does not. I can immediately say, that's a 7. So in the process of evaluation, what foo is pretty much doing is it says, okay, well, just replace the text 1 with a 7 then. I know after text 1 reported a 7 to me. So now I'm going to say, okay, sum, your first input is 7. And then I'm going to walk along the line and see if I can find another input for you. And, there's a 1. So now I have a 7 and a 1. Those are my two inputs to sum. Well, now sum has all the inputs it needs. Sum only needs two inputs. It takes those two inputs and outputs the sum of those two numbers. So the sum of 7 and 1 is 8. So foo says, okay, that's going to be 8. Okay, so now set text 1 has all the inputs it needs. It just needs 8 for its input, or it just needs one number or one value for one word for its input. 8's a word, right? Numbers are words. Numbers are a kind of words. They're words that don't necessarily have quotes in front of them. But we can say set text 8, and boink, there it is. Okay, and so let me just to show you that that's really what's happening here. We can, that'll do the same thing. So we saw that it ended up setting the text to 8. If I type this in, it goes to 8. Now, notice, now text 1 is going to report 8. So this text 1 right here is going to report 8. The sum of 8 and 1 is 9. The sum of 9 and 1 is 10. So if you're doing scoring, right, and you want to keep incrementing the score every time something happens, you want to keep bumping up the score, this is the guy you use. Set text 1, whatever your text box is. If it's named score, if you named your text box, let's edit it. Let's rename it score. If we named it score, then we would say set score, sum of scoring 1. Yoink. Okay. So that's a nice trick to have. But the evaluation, the idea of evaluation is it's this process of walking through the whole instruction and figuring out what the instruction for foo. It's foo walking through the instruction and figuring out what he needs to do, what you're asking him to do, and then doing it, basically. Okay? So that's evaluate. And then invoke. A procedure is invoked when it is made to do its work. Okay? So procedures are invoked in a particular order. For example, suppose you sent the following message to foo, show but first, and then show the rest, show rest of words. The first thing foo sees is show, but he can't invoke show until he gets input for it. Okay? So the first procedure to be invoked is but first. So the process of evaluation, we were just talked about evaluation. So evaluating means going through and figuring out what you can invoke. So you start and you walk through the list until you get to something that either doesn't need any inputs or has all the inputs it needs, and then you invoke it. and then you go back and see what else you can invoke, and you kind of work your way back that way. Okay, so for this example, we had show but first. Now, but first is a reporter that reports a list. Show but first, show rest of list. Okay? But first reports everything in the list, but except for the first thing in the list. So but first is going to report rest of list. All right? So what it's going to show. So so what happens? We try to evaluate. We start at the beginning. So Foo's trying to evaluate this instruction, right? Starts at the beginning, gets to the space, and says, no, I can't invoke this instruction yet because I don't have the inputs for it. So I can't invoke this procedure yet. I don't have the inputs. So he goes here to but first. Okay, but first needs input. So I can't invoke but first yet. I need to collect the inputs for but first. So but first needs a list. I go up here. I got a list. See, I see this beginning. I know I got to find the closing bracket, and then I'll have a list. Great. So now I have a list. Now I can invoke the but first procedure. So the but first procedure will report. Let me copy this to make sure I have it. So the but first, this procedure will report rest of list. So I can replace all of this with what gets reported, rest of list. So now show is going to just show rest of list. Okay? So this is doing, so once show gets all the inputs that it needs, then the show procedure can be invoked. Okay? So let's go here again just to show you that it actually does produce that output or produce that effect. So when this right here, this rest of list, it is, some people might think of it as output, but technically as far as the Logo language is concerned, it's not output. It's something that gets printed to the screen. Okay? It's something that is shown to you, but it's not shown, it's not passed off to another procedure. So it's not something that another procedure uses as input. It's something that you use as input, you use as information. But information that's given to you is not considered output. Information that's given to another procedure is output. So so when but first reports the list rest of list, that's output to the show command. Okay, this right here is just something printed to the screen. This is the effect produced by the show command. Okay, or the change made in the Logo in MicroWorlds in the MicroWorlds universe by the show command. Okay, but so that's evaluating and invoking. So evaluating is just a process of going through, reading, finding procedure names and words and stuff like that, and going until you find basically until you find a procedure, a command or reporter that either doesn't need any inputs or has all the inputs it needs, and then you can invoke it. And then you start going back invoking procedures until you get to the command at the front of the list, or at the front of the message. Okay, so that's the idea. The only exception I would say to that is you can have more than one command in your line of instructions that you're sending at one time. So the way this will get evaluated will be forward. We find Foo finds the procedure name forward. He knows it's a command, and he knows it needs one input. he finds the input. This can be invoked as soon as that 5 gets read. Okay, because you've collected everything that you needed. So basically, you would invoke this, and then you would read along until you collect up to 90, and then you would invoke the RT90. So this actually there's foo invokes things 2 times here. Okay, it's really, or you can even think of it as 2 instructions if you wanted to. So there's one thing happening here and one thing happening here. So this gets invoked, and then this gets invoked. But here you see you have one. There's only one command here. This is a reporter, right? So the reporter is just giving input. So this is really only one. Well, different things get invoked, but there's only one command that finally gets executed. Okay, so here this complete piece gets executed. This complete piece gets executed. Here, this gets invoked, but the whole thing doesn't get executed until show gets its input. Okay. So, and if you want to read more on this stuff on evaluate and invoke and stuff like that, there's probably some more stuff here in the readings. And this you'll find more stuff in the readings, and you'll also find like on how foo evaluates an instruction and stuff like that. Okay, so that's it for evaluate and invoke and for the definitions.